I think they're comparable to one degree. They're both great quarterbacks. They're the best two quarterbacks in the country. But if you're trying to determine who the best one is, I don't think it's very difficult at all. Trevor Lawrence is one of the best quarterbacks in college I have ever seen. Tua is simply one of the best I have seen in a specific year. I think we got a little bit carried away last year by declaring him LeBron James. Some people did LeBron of college football.
Yeah,
he's very good, but he's injury prone. He's very accurate, but when he gets hurt, he seems to collapse a little bit. And against the best teams last year, he did not perform very well. Trevor Lawrence, once he got going, remember he was a freshman, he just took over the game. And by the end, in the final game of the year, he dominated in a way I have never seen before.
Yeah. And welcome into Views from the Sidelines. It's Tuesday, August 6th. As you can tell, I'm the host, Joey Tysick, today. Chris is on vacation. So we brought in our specialist.
A very special guest.
Sammy Taormina. Welcome in.
The Michigan State man himself.
Remember, I have a podcast as well.
Yes.
OA Now.
Host of OAA Now.
And BT.
Between Taorminas. He does it all. And then, of course, Malik Hill. Am I right?
Spartan Nation for life.
We're only a few weeks away. I'm beyond excited. I can't wait.
Already have a Michigan State rivalry going on today.
Oh, yeah. We're going to get into that Lewerke talk. I can't wait to get into that Lewerke talk.
But today we're going to talk about college football preview, which is good because Chris doesn't know a ton about it. So we're going to let these two guys go at it. I'm going to sit back and listen to the discussion for the most part, but I'll chime in when I need to. So one of the first things I want to think about is what is your guys' thoughts coming off the end of last season, Clemson defeating Alabama. What was your overall thoughts of like last season and looking forward to this season?
Well, I think when you look at Clemson, the ACC is not a good conference for starters. But Trevor Lawrence, you know, what he's done for that team, basically getting that team into a 2.0 version of Clemson because they were already good before. Now, I got to remember who transferred to Missouri.
Kelly Bryant.
When he transferred. Made him basically go to Missouri. So I think that Clemson's a team that is going to be a team to be a force to reckon with. I do not trust Alabama. Because, yes, Tua Tagovailoa, I believe his last name, is a liability. When he's healthy, he's very good. But when he's not, you could tell it happened last year. And also the fact that Alabama does not have a proven backup. You know, if Tua Tagovailoa gets hurt, of course now their former backups now at Oklahoma.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and especially the way that at the end of the season last year, Clemson was scheming against Tua, and they did everything in their power to stop him. And I think they did a pretty good job the way that it finished out. So yeah, Malik, what are your thoughts? You think? Well, I'll just give a spoiler. We're going to talk about top 10, and Clemson and Alabama are number 1 and 2, obviously, from last year. Do you think that's going to be the same thing? Like, are they destined to meet up with each other in the national championship again?
Well, first, I think it's a. I wouldn't go as far as saying Tua is a liability. I think that's a stretch.
Yes.
He's behind. He's not that far behind Trevor Lawrence. He's an amazing college quarterback, and it showed last season. Alabama Nick Saban has never had a quarterback like him. And now that he has a true dynamic quarterback that can make those types of throws and make those types of plays, it just took Alabama to a whole nother level. Now, most quarterbacks when they're unhealthy aren't as effective as they are when they're fully healthy. And going against Clemson as an unhealthy quarterback, anybody would have had absolute struggles at that moment. But last season showed that Alabama and Clemson, they're in a conference of their own. It's them two in their own conference. and everybody else is vying for that third spot. It's
Okay.
domination of the two,
Time out.
and it'll be like that
Time
for
out,
a few years to come.
There's a guy
What's
named
up?
Kirby Smart who used to be
Yeah.
Alabama's defensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Guess where he's at now? Georgia.
Yeah, he's at Georgia.
So when you look at Georgia here, and they're playing the SEC.
They're not far behind Alabama. Yeah.
But I think Georgia, this could be the year Georgia gets Alabama.
It is very possible.
It's very possible.
I think they're going to meet up in the SEC championship, and at that point, it'll be all up to, will Kirby mess it up again? Because he's
I
been
don't
messing
think
it up.
Kirby's going to mess this up this year.
He better not, because the decisions he made in last year's SEC championship, people are weary about his recruiting is at a extremely high level at Alabama's level, but his coaching has to step up for them to take that next step this season.
I agree with you.
It has to.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
And speaking of Georgia, Georgia is number 3 overall, so they're the kind of outside looking in, and I'm kind of with Malik here. I'm having a hard time figuring out who can step up enough to get to that Clemson Alabama level that they were at last year.
Georgia's the closest thing.
And
Georgia's
everybody
close.
keeps saying Georgia, but I don't know if I see it. Like Jake Fromm is a great quarterback, but I don't know if it's enough. I'm not sure if anybody. I almost feel like kind of like they were saying, like those two teams are almost untouchable. I just don't see anybody below them making big enough moves. Like there's a lot of question marks from a lot of these teams. Like Oklahoma brought in Jalen Hurts now. Ohio State's not under Urban Meyer anymore. They like all these teams have little questions that are just enough. Whereas Clemson and Alabama are just the same teams almost as they were last year, and that's pretty scary for all these other teams, I think.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens. I think Clemson plays in a horrible ACC. You know,
right.
the ACC is not as competitive as the SEC is. The
Right.
SEC, Alabama's going to for sure get tested. When you're playing against teams like
LSU's really good.
LSU,
Yeah, they're getting
Louisiana
better.
State,
Texas
you're playing
A&M is getting
A&M.
better.
Yep,
Yeah.
you got Mississippi State in there. You
Even
got,
teams like Kentucky are
even
getting
got
better.
Auburn. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Auburn. You know, let's not
Exactly,
forget. You know, the Iron Bowl. You know, when Alabama plays Auburn. You know what I mean? You remember those times? It was twice that Auburn ruined Alabama's season.
Exactly. They're the one team that's been that was able to ruin Alabama's nonstop dominance.
You know,
So,
and it wouldn't surprise me if Auburn does it again to them this year. I think Alabama. Yes, they got the mighty Tua. Yes, they got a very good team. But anytime they go to Auburn, Alabama,
it's tough.
it's tough.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we remember the kick Bama kick game back in 2000. I
Yeah.
believe it was 15, I believe. No, 14. And then we remember the game in 2010 when Cam Newton went into Tuscaloosa and
Embarrassed
basically
them.
embarrassed
Yeah.
them in front of a global scale. So Auburn's done it to Alabama before. So if there's one team that I think could derail this whole talk, it could be Auburn.
Yeah, always like rivalry games are always the spoiler that can hurt a team in the season. We've seen it time and time again in almost every sport. So that would definitely be a way to, I guess, get Alabama off their game, is just going to a rivalry game where somebody's playing out of their minds and steal one. So I could definitely see that. I guess that does make a good amount of sense. Let's move on to Oklahoma, because they keep moving up on the rankings. They're at number 4. And what do you guys think about them bringing in Jalen Hurts?
I think it is. There are a lot of question marks, but there's also tons of excitement because you couldn't have a better kid coming in. First of all, just him losing his job and still just being fine with it, getting better as a backup, which was the best part of the whole story to me. He got better as a drop back quarterback, a guy that could throw accurate passes as a backup to Tua Tagovailoa. And when Tua got hurt, they brought him in and he produced and he showed how much of a better quarterback he had gotten. He deserves to have a chance to show his talent at a big scale now that Tua's the guy at Alabama. And they're going to have to change up the offense because kind of like Kyler Murray, but not as explosive. He's more of a power runner, but he's even more of a runner than Kyler Murray. Kyler had insane throwing talent, both in arm and accuracy. Jalen is a guy that's gotten better, but we're going to have to see how much better he's gotten. I don't think he'll put up the numbers Baker Mayfield and Kyler have put up. They put up historic numbers in back-to-back seasons. it's going to be really interesting to watch. He has every piece of talent at his disposal at receiver, tight end, running back. It won't be too hard for him to go into the Big 12 and put up really good numbers and be a good quarterback in the Big 12.
The Big 12 is basically a no defense league except
they're,
for TCU.
They're pretty much
But-
TCU and Iowa State are two
and Iowa
good.
State are the only two
yeah.
only two teams that play defense.
They're
going to
be able to put up those
But-
numbers.
You look at Jalen Hurts. I think they're going to have to change some parts of the offense, but still, when you look at Oklahoma, I mean, this is a team that, yes, with Hurts, they're going to change stuff around. I think it's going to come down to Oklahoma's defense because they're going to put up offensive numbers.
Their defense has fallen flat the past
Right,
few
the
years.
defense has been the big problem for Oklahoma. So when I look at the Sooners, I mean, Hurts is going to give them a ton of production. The offensive weapons are going to give them a ton of production. With Oklahoma, it's how they do in the Red River rivalry against
Exactly.
Texas, also Bedlam, and basically the Big 12 championship game. Those are the games you really got to judge Oklahoma. Of course, Texas has given Oklahoma problems,
Yeah.
in the Red River rivalry. And then, of course, we know about Bedlam with Oklahoma State. That's basically high-octane shootout, no defense games there. I mean, but I see Jalen Hurts fitting nicely at Oklahoma. Are they a college football playoff team right now? I don't know. But I think, with Oklahoma, they have the tools to run shot in the Big 12, but the games that are going to prove to me that they belong are going to be the games against Texas, Bedlam against Oklahoma State, Iowa State, and TCU. Those are going to be the four I'm watching very carefully at Oklahoma State.
Exactly. They brought in a new defensive coordinator. I think is Alex Grinch. We'll have to see how they've recruited talent on defense. They just haven't been able to mesh together well.
Right.
And we'll see how it works out.
Yeah, and I think somewhat of what you brought up is the hard part for Jalen Hurts. Luckily, he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. But to follow up guys at Oklahoma like Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray,
Two legends.
that's going to be tough. Like, people are going to be expecting that level of play from Jalen Hurts because that's what they've known for the last couple years. And I'm assuming that he'll be able to live up to it. But like you said, the problem is in college football is you can't get off to a slow start.
No.
You have to win games right from the get-go. Like, we've seen it in the past where teams like that should be good and they struggle to get themselves going. I think Michigan's kind of been that team sometimes where, it takes them a little bit to get rolling. And you can't do that in college football. Like, it's too hard. You have to be almost undefeated like we've seen. And that's kind of the biggest question mark for Oklahoma, and especially with Texas getting better. And they're starting
Tom
to
Herman's
creep
a
up.
nice job of that team.
Right. So that'll be a big question mark for Oklahoma, I think. Number 5 in the polls for the preseason is Ohio State, our first Big Ten team. We know a lot about them. We all kind of like to hate them. What do you guys think? Without Urban Meyer, what's Ohio State looking like this year?
I had a conversation on with a good friend of mine. I had a good friend of mine talk about Ohio State. They're going to rely a lot on Dobbins, the running back. And then their defense is going to be good. When I look at Ohio State, I think for them it's going to be an adjustment for them. When you look at the Buckeyes, I think they're going to rely a lot on the ground game. That's going to, I think if the offensive line is healthy for Ohio State, you know what I mean, then it's going to help the, I don't know who the new quarterback is over there at Ohio State.
I was going to say, Malik,
Justin-
do you even know?
Justin
They
Fields.
brought in Justin Fields from Georgia.
Yeah, Justin
A
Fields.
lot of expectations on his shoulders.
I think it's going to help him grow, but when you look at Ohio State, I think the schedule really helps them early because their non-conference is not as strong. When they get into conference play, it's going to be really, really daunting. Of course, the games that are going to test Ohio State for me are going to be the game at Lincoln against Nebraska because Ohio State's historically have had problems up in Lincoln.
Nebraska almost beat him last year.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then they got to go. And then, of course, the Michigan State game is going to be really interesting because Michigan State got a lot of experience back. It's going to be a test for them there. And then Ohio State also has the whiteout at Penn. I think they got to go to Penn State this year. Oh no, wait. Penn State's got to go to Columbus, right?
Yeah. Penn State comes to Columbus.
Penn State goes to Columbus. And then, of course, the game in Ann Arbor. When you look at Ohio State, I think their upswing is 11 wins, but their low swing is probably 8 wins. So that's what I'm looking at Ohio State. If their offense is not clicking, they're going to struggle.
Yeah, I also think I think their ceiling is 11 wins. I don't see undefeated. This Ryan Day transition, because he's inherited Urban Meyer's talent, and he's already recruiting at the level Urban Meyer was recruiting at, it won't be a tough transition. They're still going to pummel the small teams, but I still think kind of like last year, I think they might struggle against some tough teams in the Big Ten. Once they get into Game 6, Game 7, once they go on the road, I think they'll have some struggles. They might pull some wins out, might get upset a few times. I think it might be a 10-win season. I think it'll take a while for Justin Fields and that offense to get going. Like he said, they're going to rely heavily on J.K. Dobbins, and they have some depth behind him with some young guys coming in. That defense is scary. They have the potential number 1 pick in next year's draft, Chase Young, defensive end, he's just going to wreck a lot of it.
He might be better than Bo Bosis.
He might be a lot better. He's more athletic than them, and he's scarier when he's coming through that line. So, yeah, those games against Michigan State and going to Ann Arbor, it's going to be a tough test for Ryan Day and that team. They're going to rely on a lot of young guys on that offense. So by games 8, 9, 10, we'll see how that team works out.
Right. And I'm going to say something that we point out a lot is that the Big Ten are some of the craziest rivalry games. And if you're going to do anything, you have to win those games. And that's why Ohio State is usually the best team in the Big Ten. They win the Michigan game. They win the Michigan State games most of the time. You have to be able to beat the Penn States, the Wisconsins. And now, like you guys kind of said, now that they have a little bit of a new regime, Ohio State has such a historic program that it's not going to be that much of a change in difference overall, but just that little bit can hurt in big games like that, kind of like what you said, Malik. So that'll be interesting to see if like Michigan and Michigan State get off to strong starts and they got confidence going into that Ohio State game and they see any bit of a weakness against Ohio State, if that's where they can overcome.
Well, the strength of schedule is could hurt Ohio State because they have a soft knock conference, and then of course you look at like Michigan State. Both those teams have very tough schedules. Of course, Michigan's got to play 7 Power 5 opponents. Michigan State has to play 5 Power 5 opponents. That's going to be tough.
Right. Moving on to number 6 is a team you guys kind of mentioned as maybe a potential to pull off some upsets is LSU.
Ooh, Louisiana State, Ed Orgeron.
Yeah.
I don't trust this guy's coaching. I don't trust this guy's coaching. Because I seen the failures when he was at USC. You know what I mean?
He had a tough job to take on. He did the best with what he had.
No, it was Ole Miss. My bad. Ole Miss.
Oh yeah, Ole Miss.
Ole Miss. That was a disaster. But Ed Orgeron, I just don't trust this guy coaching. He's got a good defense. He's got a good team around him, But when you're in a league with A&M, Alabama, Auburn, yikes.
I have LSU finishing right behind Alabama in the SEC West. And I think Ed Orgeron has learned from his mistakes. I think a lot of those mistakes he's made in the past, like with Troy a few years ago, when they lost that one.
I couldn't believe they lost that one.
Oh, yeah, it was horrible.
Awful.
But they were in a huge transition, leaving from Les Miles. They had to bring in some new players, change some things on offense and defense.
Les Miles at Kansas now.
Insane.
Yeah.
It's gonna be a really weird year in the Big 12. But him having Joe Burrow back is huge. Him having a good quarterback back that can be consistent for them, along with the extremely talented young receiving core, extremely talented young running back core, and extremely talented defense. LSU, if they didn't have to go to Alabama this year, I might pick them as a surprise. Oh yeah, they have to go to Tuscaloosa.
God.
I think they could win 10 games, but that Alabama game I think will mess them up. And
Alabama has been human in Tuscaloosa. Let's remember, A&M got them there. Auburn got them in 2010. I mean, like, they have been human in Tuscaloosa.
They have, but I think this LSU team will be really good, but I think they will slip up at times because of their youth. They're not the most experienced team in the country. No. They lost some guys to the NFL, Greedy Williams. They lost some guys. So, yeah, I think they'll be a really good team, but I don't think they can get over Alabama.
Yeah.
They'll probably be a New Year's Six Bowl team.
That's always, like, the biggest problem with the SEC is, like, if you can't beat Alabama, it doesn't matter. It's very similar to the Big Ten, where it's super competitive all the way up and down the entire conference, basically. Number 7, we're going to skip over for now because it's Michigan. We'll get into more depth after we finish the top 10. Let Malik go off on that. And so number 8 is Florida, which is fitting, talking about the SEC and, being right behind Michigan and stuff. What's your thoughts on Florida, Sammy? You're shaking your head.
Well, they blew Michigan out last year.
They did.
But besides that, I'm a little surprised that Florida was ranked ahead of Michigan to start the year. Michigan was ranked ahead of Florida to start the year.
Right.
So when I look at Florida, they got some experience back. You are in the weakest of the SEC East, even though you got Georgia there when they play each other at the world's largest cocktail party in Jacksonville. But I think Florida's got some danger, some traps, some track games. I think, of course, the Georgia game, obviously. But watch out for Kentucky, because Kentucky upset them last year. That was in the swamp, I believe, last year. Now they got to go to Lexington. And then they got to play Missouri. Missouri, I'm high on this team this year because of
how
Kelly
soft
Bryant.
their schedule is.
And
Kelly
they got
Bryant,
a very soft schedule. So when you look at Florida, there's some dangers with this team. Yes, they're talented, but there's some dangers.
I agree there. There are some games that look like trap games, but I believe this is the year where it shows Florida will be contenders next year and for the years to come. I think they beat Georgia in that game. I think that's the one loss Georgia takes this season.
Dan Mullen.
I think that's the one loss Georgia takes this season. I think Florida probably goes 10-2. I think Felipe Franks starts climbing up draft boards because I think he finally comes out and shows how much talent he has. He's comfortable in that offense. He has his pieces back. That defense is deep and fast and strong. And I think Florida will impress a lot of people, and they'll finish just right behind Georgia. And I think they'll impress, and I think going into next year, they'll be a contender.
I agree on Florida.
Nice. So Florida, kind of our upset alert SEC team. They're making a comeback. We haven't really seen Florida do anything for a while
since
now.
Tebow.
Since
right.
Tebow.
Yes.
Right.
Since Urban.
Yeah. So it's been a long time. So it's kind of cool to see Florida coming back up, even if they destroyed Michigan last year. Number 9, Notre Dame. Can they somehow repeat what they did last year?
No.
We agree on something.
No.
We agree on something.
I know Notre Dame has got a lot of hype around them. They got that dancing leprechaun, that lucrative NBC contract they got. But when they look at Notre Dame, this is a team that is going to be on the downward spiral because they don't have – the only saving grace that Notre Dame has is the fact that they play 5 ACC opponents.
They have a weak schedule almost every year.
They got a weak schedule. Instead of having to play – I know they got to go to Ann Arbor, but it feels odd that this team doesn't play the Michigans every year, the Michigan States every year, the Purdue's every year.
With an independent schedule.
With an independent schedule.
They don't schedule more impressive games.
I mean, like, I know they got to play Stanford. You got to play Southern California. I mean, but Notre Dame, I don't trust this team. I really do not trust the Irish, even though they got those games against Stanford, USC, and Michigan. So, Notre Dame, downward spiral.
And I think the reason they keep scheduling these pretty easy schedules is, just look at last year. The committee didn't seem to really care that they had an easier schedule. they decided, they're a good team. Let's put them in.
If you go undefeated or you have one loss and you're on the caliber of Notre Dame, you're gonna get in.
Right.
Even with when you have USC, Stanford, and Michigan on your schedule almost every year, USC is a high-profile program. Michigan is a high-profile program. Even if they have average years or down years, USC has been down since
Forever.
For a while. But USC's on the schedule, and if they go to USC and win, it's a high-caliber win. If they go to Stanford and win, it's a high-caliber win. It's kind of flawed. I think Notre Dame Notre Dame sees themselves as above everybody else.
Right.
Like you said, they have the NBC contract. They're separate from everybody. They won't join a conference. And they get to do stuff like this where they have these types of schedules and they can just slide through with pretty good teams and have one loss or go undefeated. But I think they have good talent. Ian Book is an accurate quarterback. He's nothing special. He's going to get the job done. I don't like them that much, but with their schedule, I honestly I think they could be a 9-3 team. I think USC is going to get better. I think they're going to lose in Ann Arbor. I don't think they're going to make the playoff.
We both agree on something on Notre Dame. They're going to lose in Ann Arbor. That's rare.
I don't necessarily like Notre Dame either,
No.
just for the simple fact of the scheduling and all that.
Yeah,
that
they're going to be a
surrounds
good team, but just Notre Dame, the
whole aura.
Yes.
They have like
Yes.
an aura
I know.
around them
Exactly.
that just makes a lot of people
we're the
unhappy.
Saints of college football.
I know.
Right.
That's their reputation.
To round out the top 10 of the preseason rankings, we have Texas, another one of those teams that we haven't really seen in a while that are slowly coming back
Tom
up.
Herman's done a good job with this team.
He has. Yeah.
He has really improved that team. Watch for Sam Ettinger, their quarterback. I'm really high on him. I
He's
think
going to be in the Heisman race.
He's going to be in the Heisman race. Yes, I think the game that I think can make him or break him is going to be that game against Oklahoma in the River Rivalry in Dallas. But it kind of feels odd that Texas doesn't play A&M. You know,
It is.
odd.
It's
I don't.
wrong. Yeah.
I mean, they got to play A&M. You know, I wanted to play A&M again.
The schools can't come to an agreement for some
No,
reason.
I don't know why.
Yeah, it's like I think they said they'll schedule each other when they feel like it's good for their interests, which it's good for the fan base.
It's good for the fan bases.
Exactly. It's great for college football. I don't know why you just don't schedule it again.
I mean, they diss each other in the college fight songs.
Exactly,
You know what I
yeah.
mean? If you look at Texas's fight song, they say goodbye to A&M, and then A&M's fight song, they say so long to Texas University, so long to the orange and the white. You know what I mean? So they diss each other in their college fight songs.
And we're not going to really talk about it, but they're ranked 11th. A&M is ranked 11th in the preseason rankings.
Right next to
They're
each
right
other.
next to each other.
Yeah.
Why
Exactly.
not? Why would you not want to have a rivalry game? Michigan State, Ohio State, games like that are what people
Yeah.
live for.
It's also
Alabama, Auburn.
it's just as
Florida,
weird.
Georgia.
Texas scheduled LSU week 2, but they won't schedule Texas A&M. It's crazy.
That's
But-
crazy.
I still feel like Texas has a step to take to be back. Every year, people want to crown them as being back. To me, they have to win the conference,
right.
and they have to be in serious consideration for the college football
Then again, they
playoff.
lost to Maryland
be
last
back.
2 straight years. So
Th-
that's not good.
Exactly. Them beating Georgia in a New Year's Six bowl was huge for them. Tom Herman and that team took a huge step,
But they haven't beat Maryland the last 2 years.
which is why they're not back. You have to win games like that convincingly to really beat Texas again. Like you said, Sam Ehlinger is the face of that team. He has his pieces on offense. That defense, still don't trust them. They're young and reshuffling pieces. I still think they'll probably finish second in the Big 12, but they still have steps to take to get back to where they need to be.
All right. So that's your preseason top 10. Now I want everybody to go around, and we're going to talk about one team that you guys think could be that surprise team. Sammy, hold off on the Michigan State because I know that's one of them. We'll talk about
They aren't
them.
one of
Somebody outside of Michigan State. Who do you think is a team to watch out for that's outside of the top 10?
Nebraska.
Nebraska?
I like Scott.
Everybody's jumping on the Nebraska
Scott
train.
Frost, what he's done in Lincoln. Yeah, last year was a rough year, but usually in year 2, year 3, you know, when he was at Central Florida, he turned that team around, and look what they have. Yeah, I like Adrian Martinez, a quarterback. They've got some pieces. They got players that are committed to win. In that, system. I like Nebraska as one of them. Another one I'm watching is Utah. The Utah Utes. I think that the Pac-12 is not a strong conference when you
Right.
look at it.
Mm-hmm.
So
They're top heavy on both sides. They have really good teams at the top.
they got good teams, but Utah is the one I'm watching very carefully because I think they're going to be the ones I think can come out of the Pac-12 and win that conference.
Malik?
Because it's a team we spoke of earlier, because of how soft their schedule is, they don't really have a serious challenge until week 9 when they play Georgia, Missouri. They have Kelly Bryant coming in. They have serious weapons on the outside and at running back, and they have an improving defense. They could start 8-0 and be like top 15 in the country, and everybody will be confused, and then they'll finish 9-3 and come back down to earth. But Missouri will shock a lot of teams to start the season, and I think I'll try to go with a group of 5 team. I'll go with let's go Houston. I like Dana Holgerson at Houston. I like De'Aaron King. I'm going with an out-of-box pick. I don't want to go with the cookie-cutter picks. I'm not picking UCF. I'm not picking Cincinnati because they were a surprise team last year, even though I love Cincinnati as a team.
UCF got their quarterback back.
I know, but that's a team everybody expects to be good. I think Dana Holgerson can unleash De'Aaron King even more, and I think that offense can be explosive. I think they could be a 10-11 win team.
I'm going to go with
Out-of-the-box pick.
I'm going to go with a pretty it's not super easy pick, I guess, but Sammy brought up the Pac-12. I'm going to go with Oregon. I think they're ranked like 14, so they're just outside of the top 10. But Justin Herbert coming back, I think, was a big thing for them, and I was honestly shocked that he didn't go into the draft. So it's kind of like a make or break season for him, for him to deny the draft where he probably would have gone and decide to come back to play. I feel like he's got to have some sort of mentality that he just wants to win out. And so Oregon's my team to watch just for that reason. I'm hoping that Herbert has this killer instinct mentality and leads them. But unfortunately, in that conference and the way that team plays, they just have to outscore everybody. And I don't know if that's going to happen. Right.
I also think Iowa State will finally put themselves on the map and beat Iowa. They've been improving the past 2 years. I think they finally beat Iowa.
It'll be an interesting game to the Cyhawk. It'll be very interesting. Is that game at Ames or Iowa City this year?
I think last year it was in Iowa City.
It was in
it's at Iowa State
probably
this
in
year.
Ames this year. Yeah, it's in Ames. That'd be a good matchup. That'd be a heck of a game.
Will.
All right. Here we go. Enough beating around the bush. We're going to start with Michigan State.
Oh, boy.
We're going to start with Michigan State since Michigan is ranked. We'll talk about them last.
Well, Michigan State's ranked 20th.
They are. What do you guys think about Michigan State? Because my biggest thing is that they're improving, but I'm scared that it's not enough. And my biggest question mark is Brian Lewerke. And I don't know why, but like there's been so many times where he's looked really good, and then there's other times where he just looks not so good. And the consistency bothers me a lot for this team.
As a Michigan fan, I'm going to start first on this one. I'm going to start first. I'm going to be completely honest. I think they could land in the second spot ahead of Ohio State. It's possible. And if they didn't have to go to Ann Arbor this year, they could have gone 10-2 or 11-1. They could have really could have been the shock of college football this season. But even though they have so much returning on both sides, I don't 100% trust Brian Lewerke. I don't trust Connor Hayward as a really good Big Ten back. I don't think he'll show up in big games. And I think Ohio State will just have that edge of talent over them. I think Ohio State will beat them, and I think they'll lose to Michigan in Ann Arbor. And I think they'll either go 9-3 or 10-2, possibly. I think this is another rebound year for Michigan State. I think they could have been second or possibly tied for first in the Big Ten, but I think the schedule doesn't shake out for them. The Arizona State game is huge. It is extremely huge for that team.
Okay. I'm going to get you straight now.
All right.
What is Michigan State's record the last 5 times they went to Ann Arbor?
The last 5 times they've gone to Ann Arbor. They beat them last time they went to Ann Arbor. Before that, I think they won the last 5 times. What is it, 3-2?
4-1.
4-1? Okay, 4-1.
4-1.
All right.
So I'm looking at Michigan State. And yes, I got concerns at running back with Hayward. I got plenty of faith in Brian Lewerke, and he's got something to prove. Let's remember Mark D'Antonio's mantra. Michigan State plays well when they have a chip on their shoulder. They got a chip on their shoulder after going 6-6 last year. They have a quarterback back. Their defense, they have one of the best run defenses in the country.
100%.
You have players like Joe Bocci, Kenny Wilkes, Raekwon Williams. I mean, and when you look at Michigan State, the question's going to be is how healthy this offensive line is going to be.
I was just going to ask, do you think that offensive line will improve enough?
If the offensive line stays healthy, this team can win 11 ball games. I think they can go into Ann Arbor and beat Michigan again.
Oh, they can. It's
They
possible.
can.
It's possible.
Here's the daring thing. I know a lot of Buckeyes ain't going to like this. And I know it's Ohio State's homecoming when Michigan State goes to Columbus. But experience matters. In a game like this, it's going to be a low-scoring game between Michigan State and Ohio State. I think it's going to be very low scoring. I think it could be a 10-7 game like it was back in 2017. This is a team that has everything of a making of a rebuild, of a rebirth. Not a rebuild, rebirth. And I think Michigan State, yes, the Arizona State game's important. Yes, they got to go to Evanston. They have to go to Madison. They got to go to Columbus. Got to go to Ann Arbor. And you have Penn State and East Lansing. But when you look at this team and what Mark D'Antonio's done, he has gotten the best out of his players, of what he's got. Mark D'Antonio has done more with less than people give him credit for. This is a guy that's won 3 Big Ten championships. So when I look at Michigan State, if Lewerke's healthy, if the offensive line's healthy, if Cody White has a big year at wide receiver, this football team can win at least 11 games this year. 11 games.
I'm going to be honest. I think it's more than just the health of that offensive line, because I think they just weren't very good last year. Even when there was health, I think they just weren't very good. That led to Lewerke getting hurt because he was getting hit almost every other snap, and his health just deteriorated. I think that O-line has a lot, more than a lot to prove.
That's going to be the key for Michigan State this year, the offensive line. If their offensive line is healthy, this is an 11-win football team. If not, then I could see this team being a 8-win team or a 9-win team.
My other big concern is kind of how you mentioned, Sammy, is the schedule, that they have all these big games and they have to go on the road. And that's just hard just in general. And I understand it.
The year they went to the college football playoff, they went into Columbus and they went into Ann Arbor. You know, those are games that they won in.
Right.
So I don't have much of a concern when you look at having to go on the road to those games, because this team's been battle tested. But I know, and it pays dividends, especially because I know you got to go to Madison and you got to go to Evanston. Those are going to be 2 very tough games right there. But everything just layers out, you know, because Arizona State, you kind of view it as the Oregon game a year ago. You know what I mean? Back in 2015. So everything just kind of layers out when you look at it.
Right. Yeah, I think they need to get at least one of those big games under their belt and out of the way to really prove something, and then I think that confidence could relay into the following games after that. But that's just my biggest concern, I think, for the team.
And I just hope they don't wear those god-awful neon green lines.
Oh, yeah.
Those are terrible.
Yeah, they don't really work. All right, to the flip side, Michigan, the team that always comes up a little bit short.
So,
Malik, let me just phrase it so that, because my biggest concern is, you know, they got like a somewhat of a new offense going. They've kind of changed roles within the team a little bit. They luckily they lost Karen Higgin, but they have depth at running back. What are some of your thoughts or concerns about this new offense? The only good thing is that they have 20-year veteran Shea Patterson.
Another year of Michigan football. It's hard for me to talk about this every single year because it just gets more painful every single year. They have everything they need on the offensive side. This is going to be the best O-line they've had since the Lloyd Carr years. This receiving core is stellar. They have a top 5 receiving core in the country. Shea Patterson is experienced. They have to figure out who their number 1 running back guy is, but they usually have running back by committee, and they have talent. The defense has inexperience, but they've recruited so well on defense that Don Brown is going to have them ready. 2016 and 2018, 2 teams that should have made the college football playoff, but it came down to 1 game, and they dropped the ball both times. 2016, you go into the Ohio State game. If you win that, you're going to the college football playoff. You lose. Last year, if you win the Ohio State game, you're going to go to the Big Ten championship and probably make the playoff. You lose.
Get torched by Dwayne Haskins.
Yep.
Jim Harbaugh has made the moves necessary. He got rid of Pep Hamilton and that stale vanilla offense that couldn't get it done against real talent.
He was making millions.
Don Brown, Dr. Blitz, all he could do was blitz in the big games and didn't make any other adjustments. It all fell apart in the big games. They've learned their lessons. Urban Meyer is gone. I think they beat Ohio State this year in Ann Arbor, and I think they finally get to the Big Ten championship.
But do they make the college football playoff? Or are you saying they have to win the Big Ten championship to get the playoff nod?
I don't trust them, but
I was gonna say
let's just
I was gonna say my biggest concern with Michigan is losing that one random game.
And they have a tough schedule.
Right.
They have a tough schedule.
Like if they don't,
they go to Wisconsin week 3. I think they have Michigan State, then Notre Dame, and then like Indiana, which is a trap game, and then
Indiana's always a trap game for Michigan.
Oh man.
Yeah, like the big thing for Michigan, at least what it seemed like in the last few years, is that sometimes they get too comfortable with themselves.
Absolutely.
And
they rely on the Michigan, we're the Wolverines. We can come in and just stick to what we do, and we don't have to change anything. And they got embarrassed last year.
Right.
They didn't want to make adjustments. They
thought they to Ohio State.
Yeah. They did. They thought they were too good to change up anything, and
they were favored in that game last year.
And like
it came back to hit them. It hit them right in their face. It came right back to them.
And like we've been saying, in college football, you cannot drop games. You have to basically go undefeated. Sometimes you can go with 1 loss, and it has to be a good game. It's just too hard. And that's the biggest problem with Michigan is they need to really lock in. And I feel like we've said it the last couple of years is like they need to lock in for every game. And for some reason, they just can't get over that mental state where they just think, oh, we can just go in and roll all these teams. So if they can somehow figure that out, Michigan always has a chance to make it. But that's just always the biggest question mark as well.
Harbaugh and Don Brown seem to have made the proper decisions and changes to put this team where it needs to be.
If we bring it up to every time, if they don't get it done, where does Harbaugh lie?
It's still at Michigan. So he's still going to be there.
He'll still be there.
Yeah.
But there's going to be a lot of Michigan fans upset.
Oh, yeah.
Here are my
Definitely.
thoughts on Michigan. Yes, they got a murderer's row of schedule. I see this team believing too much in their press clippings. Ohio State has owned Michigan. Michigan's only beaten Ohio State twice since 2002, the year Jim Tressel has been there since Jim Tressel's been at Ohio State. Then it changed. The only 2 wins they got was 1 year with Tressel, and then the other one was with Lou Fickell.
I'm 23 and I've seen them beat Ohio State twice. That just that statement right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And then Michigan State, of course, ever since Lloyd Carr left, Michigan State has won almost half of the games in that rivalry.
Mark
D'Antoni
has been the best coach in Michigan
09,
since Lloyd Carr left.
10, 11, 13, 14, 15, 17. That's 7 of the last 11 years against Michigan. that tells me that program has not gotten it done against Michigan State and Ohio State on a consistent basis.
Not at all.
And I know where you're going here. And I think I know where you're going here. The schedule is daunting. But when I look at Michigan's games, I think that game against Michigan State is so huge for this team.
Oh, yeah. It's big time.
Because I think Michigan State's going to be...
They're going to give them everything
They're going to
they
give
have.
everything they have.
Yeah.
And then the game against Ohio State. Could this, until Jim Harbaugh can get that Ohio State thing, and Tom Brady even said this yesterday in a press conference, Michigan's just got to beat the Buckeyes. They have not done it.
It's been holding them back for years.
It's been holding them back for years. There's a reason why, when you look at the Big Ten East, you have Ohio State, you have Michigan State, and Penn State even has been the Big Ten championship game. Michigan has not been there. Everybody talks about how good Michigan football is. They have not even been to the Big Ten championship game.
They're overrated.
And that describes it. If Michigan loses to Ohio State and Michigan State, I know you don't want to hear this.
If they lose to both, it's a failure of a season completely.
But where does this team go? I mean, Jim Harbaugh, I know he's done a good job there in Ann Arbor, but where does this team go if this team cannot beat Michigan State, Ohio State? Where does this team go?
If they lose to both of them, there will be a huge reevaluation of everything, but they're not going to fire him. They're not going to. This program is in a healthy place for the first time since Lloyd Carr left. He can't win the big games, but this is the healthiest the program has been since Lloyd Carr left. And you can't just abandon that ship. He's 5 years in, and
these are his recruits in that program.
They are.
These are his recruits.
We got to wait to see what happens.
You look at. I thought Brady Hoke got a bad deal at Michigan. Of course, he basically had some of Rich Rodriguez's recruits when he got fired. But there's no excuse on Jim Harbaugh now.
None.
I mean, I know in his first year in Ann Arbor, they did Who's Got Better Than Us song and all that. And look what happened. Lost to Michigan State, lost to Ohio State. When you look at Michigan football, there's a reason why Ohio State's better than them. There's a reason why Michigan State has gotten the job done against them. It's because one problem. And Michigan fans cannot accept the fact that
Most
both
Michigan
those
fans
teams
can't.
have been more physical than Michigan. They've been more physical. You look at the offensive line. It's been the difference in both games against those teams. So when I look at Michigan, they got experience back. But the jury's out with this team. They got to beat Michigan State and Ohio State. And the schedule is brutal for Michigan.
I think they can lose.
They gotta go to Iowa. Iowa's been a pain.
Actually,
in Michigan.
Iowa comes here.
Oh, Iowa comes in. Okay.
Yeah.
But Iowa's been a pain to Michigan's thorn.
Yeah.
Especially when Michigan's had to go to Iowa City. We know what Wisconsin did. When Michigan went to Madison. So it's going to be a tough chore for Michigan this year. I think Michigan, as low, they can win 8 games, but probably as high as maybe 11, 12 games. But Michigan football, until they beat Michigan State and Ohio State on a consistent basis, that program ain't going anywhere.
Any rebuttals?
He's right.
Yeah.
100%.
That's kind of something we talked about, though, is like the Big Ten is so tough. And I always kind of compare them to the SEC and especially in the Big Ten, it's like the big 3, Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State. If those teams can't beat each other, they're not going to make it anywhere. The team that beats the other 2 teams, they're the ones that are going to usually come out of the Big Ten most of the time. And the other problem about the Big Ten is there's Iowa, there's Penn State, there's Wisconsin, and there's all these teams that
Nebraska.
Right, Nebraska that
Minnesota even.
can just jump on you at any time. And it's similar to how we talk about like in basketball. The Big Ten is pretty deep all the way through, and you cannot take a game off. And like we've seen, kind of like Sammy said, is Michigan has not been able to beat the Ohio State or Michigan State, and that's not why they're not getting out of it. And it's something mentally, I guess. I don't know.
It's been mental for a long time for Michigan fans. You know, Michigan State has been there, won it. Ohio State's been there, won it. Heck, Penn State won a Big Ten title. Been there, done that. Michigan football, where have they been?
They lost to
They
Florida.
have not been to Indianapolis yet.
Right. Yeah, so that's like the big test for them. They definitely have all the pieces that they need. Like I said, Shea Patterson, 6th year quarterback. Like,
I think he's 5th
Fifth
actually.
year.
is he? I
Or-
thought I saw 6th, but because of
Is
like
he? Is he?
I think
year?
he's-
Is he a true senior? Or is he? I can't remember if he's a true senior or 5th year. I can't remember.
I don't remember either. But either way, he's had enough experience. He's been big talk for a long time that he should be able to get the job done. And not that he's done bad or anything, but with the receiving core that he has right now, like Malik was saying, it's probably top 5 in the country. And, you know, Michigan already known for their defense these days. They should have the complete package. But can they get past Ohio State, Michigan State? That's always the biggest question.
I think they could lose one of the two and still be at the top of the standings. They have to beating Ohio State. I think they could drop Michigan State and beat Ohio State. That last game, that's the one. They have to. They could go 9-3 and beat Ohio State, and people would be fine with that, just as long as they beat them, because that shows a step has truly been made.
True. Yeah. If they have like a technically for a ranked 7 preseason team and they do all right, they don't have a great season, but they beat Ohio State and Michigan State. Then
Michigan football has been ranked in the top 10 in these preseason polls
Past 3-4 years.
past 3-4 years. They've not gotten the job done.
Right. They
You
haven't
know?
lived up to their
No.
recruiting classes or their expectations. It all on paper, their talent is there. There's something about it all coming together, the chemistry that they just haven't figured out. And it's kind of dangerous, especially now with Michigan State kind of getting back on track. You know, they've kind of taken a couple fumbles here and there the past couple of years. But this will be Michigan's big test, I think, is this year, is can they actually get over the hump? One last thing I want to touch on, too. Outside of those top 3 teams in the Big Ten, they were talking about Michigan State, and Ohio State. Who do you guys think is that team that's on the outside looking in? You guys think it's Penn State, Wisconsin, Nebraska? So you're sticking with Nebraska?
I'm watching Nebraska carefully, but there's a team in Minneapolis, Minnesota,
Yes.
called the Minnesota Little Gophers.
People do. need to pay
PJ
attention
Fleck
to them,
has
yeah.
done a really nice job. Last year, they took the axe in Madison from Wisconsin for the first time in a long time. I'm watching Minnesota carefully. You know, we don't talk about Northwestern here. Northwestern,
They got to the
They're-
Big
They
Ten
got Big Ten
championship last
championship
year.
last year.
They're ranked 25, I think.
Yeah.
They-
Northwestern, nobody talks about them. I mean, when you look at the Big Ten West, I mean, Northwestern, they're going to be a player this year. You go look at Nebraska, obviously. Then you got Iowa, you know what I mean? But Purdue, last year they went to a bowl game. I mean,
Yeah, the Big Ten West is getting better.
they're getting better. But until the jury's out, the Big Ten East, you got Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State. I mean, Penn State's going to be a very young team this year.
Yeah, they're going to take a little bit of a step back this year. I think they're an 8-win team.
Yeah, they're an
Probably.
8-win team. But
yeah, the East is still dominant.
yeah, East still dominant.
Malik, who would you say would be a surprise team for you?
And the Big Ten,
Yeah.
everybody's jumping on the Nebraska train, so I'll go Minnesota.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they have a nice schedule. PJ Fleck has injected that intensity and energy into that program. Those young guys believe in him. People understate how much kids believing in a system and a coach really works. Because if you've seen in instances like Louisville last year, that team quit on Bobby Petrino, and it was one of the worst things we've ever seen out of a team. Florida State, they quit on Willie Taggart halfway through the year. When kids believe in a coach and they give their everything and they play just execute clean, like smart football. They believe in PJ Fleck, and I think they could win 9 games this year and possibly end up second or third in the West.
Boy Taggart still at Florida State or he got fired?
It's a second year.
Oh, good.
It's a make or break year for him.
Oh, goodness.
All right. One final thing that we'll talk about too. Let's put these down. What do you guys think is going to be the other 2 college football playoff teams outside of Clemson and Alabama? Unless you guys want to take Clemson or Alabama out of it.
Outside of the 1 and 2, my 3 and 4, Georgia and Michigan. My 5 is Utah.
I'm actually taking Alabama out of it.
Okay.
I'm going to go Clemson 1, Georgia 2, Oklahoma 3. I'm a little crazy on this. Michigan State, my 4. My 5, Ohio State. And my 6 is actually Alabama.
I'm going to go Clemson, Alabama. But then I'm going to go with Oklahoma as somewhat of a surprise. And then I'm going to go Michigan. And
they're going to get there at some point. At some point they're going to get there.
And my only reasoning is I think Michigan State is just a step away. I have concerns about their offense, and their defense is good, but it's not as good as it has been. At least when I remember Michigan State, I guess back in
they're still
11,
12,
12, all that
stuff.
stuff.
They're still going to be really good.
Right. But they're not. They're more of a run defense. They're not as overall, I guess. So I just have some question marks there for State. And then Ohio State, I feel like their transition is going to be a little bit weird, and that they may have to rely on J.K. Dobbins a little bit too much early on to get their offense kind of accumulated to each other.
But they have a soft schedule is going to help them out.
Right. Or it could hurt them because then they'll
get too comfortable.
Right. Exactly. Kind of play into the Michigan way where you get too comfortable with certain teams and certain games, and you can't figure out the rivalry games. So I'm going to go with a kind of surprise Michigan. Outside of that, maybe Georgia. And then I'd like to go with a flyer and take Texas.
Well, with Alabama, I just cannot trust them when they play Auburn. You know what I mean? Because that game's going to be really, really tough on Alabama. It always has been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think college football, as always, is going to be super exciting. And we'll just have to wait and see. Big Ten is always super fun to watch. I'm definitely going to keep an eye on those 2 teams, Michigan State. Ohio State's got some question marks as well, but we'll see how it goes when it starts up. Next week, we'll be back. Chris should be off of vacation. I don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll figure it out.
We might do the NFL preview so we can hear his absurd Jets takes.
Oh, yeah, that's true. It's going to be a fun episode. We'll see. We'll see you guys next time. Sammy, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Go Blue.
Party on.